Yeah, thanks for having me invited to this conference. Thierry, very inspiring presentation. I've probably learned as much as you did just now about Ignitis and its future plans, because I just started in May here, 6th of May, so roughly a month. And I think on my first day, Adele, you met me at the coffee place and said, Timmy, I have an idea. And I was as naive as I said, well, great. And then she explained me what's going to happen today, and I couldn't say no, right? First day, big boss is asking, you want to present? So now I'm here. Yeah, I want to talk first a bit about myself and what made me. And Thierry, you said a very funny thing. Middle-aged European, a bunch of middle-aged European persons, what makes them going to Lithuania? I'm afraid I'm one of them, right? And that was a cautious decision. I was, for the past 12 years or 11 years, I was working in Germany, Hamburg. I'm originated from Germany, for a supplier, for Siemens Energy, supporting the sales activities. And then a chance to join Ignitis arose. And I've never heard about Ignitis. And frankly, I also didn't do much traveling in the Baltics as such, not because I didn't find it interesting, it was just not on my radar. So I was like, okay, what is this company and what are we talking here? And then I started to educate myself, I started to inform myself. And that was the time when I really got inspired by the vision of this company, by this offshore project I was hired for, to what extent this offshore project will provide electricity to Lithuanian households. Like, I think 25%, and with the second project, maybe up to 40. And that was huge. And being on the other side of the table, working for a supplier, I was always very thrilled, and also I wanted to understand the majority of building a project, not just delivering, even it's a core element, the turbines itself, it's value chain-wise a big chunk, but it's not all. It is just to be a supplier, right? And here I have the chance to understand the entirety of a project, with all its packages, with all the works that has to be procured, the services we have to enter into, etc., etc. And that was, I think, one of the reasons I said, let's do it, let's go and join Ignitis. So speaking of the packages, how we call it, that basically makes an offshore project. So if you think, what does it mean to build an offshore project? What is behind an offshore project? It's just a few turbines in the waters? No, it's much more complex than that. And we as legal, we are very early engaged into various activities. So when planning an offshore projects, there are several working packages, as we call it, and that they are all correlated, more or less, but they are correlated. And that makes the project and the project timeline. When you ask yourself, when do we have to enter into which contract? When do we have to ensure the delivery of what services, of what hardware, so that the project can go into commercial operation in 2030 or end of 2029? So there's huge planning behind that. And when this planning, the more mature this planning gets, the more we understand in what type of contracts do we have to enter at what point in time, to ensure that the handover of the project and the commercial operation date is secured. So as you see here, there are just a few selected working packages, in my opinion, are the most crucial ones. The turbine supply agreement, TSA, I think is one of the core contracts we have to negotiate and enter into. It is, from a value perspective, certainly one of the biggest numbers that a contract, with the contract value as such, together with the service agreement that can last servicing the turbines. Here we talk about 15, maybe even 25 years. Sometimes it correlates with the design life of a wind turbine, of a wind farm, but can be shorter. So these two packages alone are tremendous. And the way they're interconnected with the other packages, just to give you an example, we are currently in discussion with the port in Klaipėda. So how do you discuss with the port authorities and with the owner of the port How does this quayside, how do they have to construct, what does need to happen in order for the vessels to arrive, to bring the heavy loads, where to store them, how to arrange the loads, that the crane can put them on the installation vessel, and so on. So you see, in order to do that, you need to understand which turbines you may procure and may not procure at a very early stage, which we are still in the selection process. So you have to work with assumptions. And as you work with the assumptions, you will more and more getting precise. You have options in your contracts. And then the more mature it gets, the better you can focus. And then you eliminate what is not going to happen. And you materialize what is planned and what is happening. Same with the foundations. The foundations and the transitional part on the foundation, you know, the foundations are in the water, and then there's a transitional piece, TP, and on that you have the tower. They also need to be designed in a way that they fit a specific turbine type. And again, you don't know maybe at the very early stage which turbines you're going to procure. So you have to work with assumptions again, and later on, these assumptions become more than assumptions, they become facts. And I'm raising this to make you understand that all these packages, how they are correlated, and where we as legal, because we are, and that's on the next slide, because in my view and the way I like to structure the team, and the structure's of course already there. So my job is, that's an orchestra, what instrument should play in which order when it comes to legal support. So in a very simplified manner, what you see here is that every package is supported by core team, and this core team consists of a work package manager, the contract manager, a supply chain manager, and legal. That's one of us. And even within this group of colleagues that are working to deliver one package, there's also an overlap of what you do. For example, the contract manager may be the document owner, maybe the owner of a contract, whereas the legal is then looking into the nitty-gritty stuff of how to draft things, how to revise things, to comment, to negotiate with law firms, with clients on the other side, and to finalize a contract. At the same time, the contract manager may then more focus together with the supply chain manager on the commercial aspects of a contract. As you know, you have the main body of a contract, but where the music plays is in the technical schedules, and of course commercial schedules, but luckily I don't have to understand numbers. But you have to closely align with these functions. And that, I think, is another aspect that is really fun part of work, because you not just only look into contracts and do your drafting behind your desk in the back office, you sit with the clients, you negotiate with them, and in order to negotiate, you have to understand how your product, how the package is actually working, how it's functioning. And how do you do that? You do that when you enter into the technical details, into commercial aspects, in order to build up your arguments, in order to build up your understanding, because the other side, they will immediately understand if you have no clue about what you're talking, because you're just a lawyer. And we don't want that, right? And that is what I personally enjoy working in-house, and also here working with Ignitis, to be part of a team, not just, that's the first part, not just being an individual contributor, where your core expertise will come into play, but then also to transition that into your team, and to work with them, and to be an important part of the entire team. The second bullet point is it goes without saying. So we are very early engaged, pre-preparation to contract signature, bid preparation. What does it mean? At some point in time, according to the timelines, we have decided when do we have to enter into certain bid scenarios, meaning ITTs. So we invite potential suppliers to submit their tenders, and then we are going into the selection phase. In order to do that, you need to have documents in place, also legal documents, not just design or technical documents, legal documents. This is where we come into play, together with sometimes external support. We are teaming up also with external legals, also with local lawyers, local Lithuanian lawyers, because they have to do a sanity check of the documents that are being produced maybe by international law firms, but it has to be in line with local laws and regulations. We cannot, of course, have anything in the contract that goes against mandatory law principles, even though we have, of course, freedom of contract, so both parties can, to a majority, decide how they want to basically allocate risks and what a contract should contain, but that has boundaries, as you all know, and that is the sanity check. We need to ensure that every contract that we produce and that we're going to enter into, it is enforceable in Lithuania in case needed, and it does not it is not in breach with Ordre Public or any other stuff that would be mandatory to follow here in Lithuania. That's what I just mentioned a bit about managing allocation of contractual risk. There's another aspect, I think. What is the time? Yeah, good, I'm not out of time. You give me a signal, right, if I'm over time? Thanks. Okay, so the third bullet point, contractual risks. So it's not just about drafting and putting a contract together where you think this is a fair allocation of risk. That should be on Ignitis, and that should be on the supplier side when you talk about risks, right? What is behind that term is also to understand the likelihood of whether a risk may materialize or not. Because we as lawyers, we sometimes tend to talk a lot about problems that are highly theoretical. Personally, I enjoy that also sometimes, but it's more maybe for an educated reason, or for if we would work in a university, or just have it for the sake of a discussion. But in fact, talking about risks, keep in mind, does these risks materialize? Is there a likelihood that these risks materialize? And what is the likelihood? Because behind every risk, you can put a number together with your commercials again, because you have to build up accruals and you have to build up money that could, in case this risk materializes, that could help us to overcome and to budget for those risks. And that is where we also, together with the core team, evaluating these risks. And if everything goes well, and I hope that we will do that, of course, sometimes then you will present these risks to management, make them transparent to management. What is in the contract? What do they need to know? What legal risks we may enter into? But these risks are risks that we can't control. So we are willing to do that, because on the other side, we have a supplier, just one, a monopoly situation where we have not a choice of going and entering into a contract with whatever supplier. So we have to adopt a bit to the market, and they know their position in the market. So that requires us to understand the risks we are entering into, and management also to be aware, and then to accept or not to accept. And then we have to renegotiate if we don't get green light. Yeah, next, negotiate, review, and drafting of contracts. I think I talked a bit about that. You know what that means. It is connected to the way we support the business and of what we have to do. So not much to say about that. And maybe the last one, quite important as an in-house lawyer, and you do that if you're working in a law firm, for example, you do that yourself when you have a client. You not try to be a theoretical lawyer and just send your legal opinion or legal memo. No, what you want is you bring the client in a situation, you give them a tool, maybe a concept that they can use when they negotiate contracts. So when we work with the team, it is important that our advice is not theoretical, it is hands-on, and it really helps the business to find a solution for a scenario where they can't, because positions are too far away. You end up in discussions going back and forth, but you need to come to a conclusion. That is where a business-driven mindset is extremely important to bring the project forward. I think that may have been my last slide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Timmy, for your presentation.